All right, GM. I hope everyone is having an excellent Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in to our session on the future of AI for consumer products. I'm Chad from Club CPG. We've got an awesome discussion that's going to go on today with Greg, Heather, and Guan. I'll turn it over to Greg in 1 second. Just want to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Let me make sure that everything is still running smoothly. It looks like it. No, there we go. Yes, perfect. And let me just want to do a little bit of housekeeping on some upcoming sessions. So for those of you who have been paying attention, this week is AI week. So over on Thursday, Gregarious will be back hosting a workshop and Q&A over on Zoom around building AI strategy for your business. Next week is marketing week. We've got a conversation with Hype Partners and then some office hours with Gali, our partnerships manager here at Club CPG. And then just looking at what the next few weeks will be like. We've got some additional marketing. We'll have a session around consumer goods. We've got a tech week, a last week around fundraising, which includes some pitch practice, and then pitch week. So we are almost halfway through the fall 2023 session here at the Club CPG Accelerator. Very exciting times. And then, we'll get started with the conversation today. Hopefully, a lot of you are already familiar with Gregarious and the work he's got going over on at Zealous. But I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce our participants. For those of you watching live, drop any questions that you've got for the panelists in the comments. And then I'll be back a little bit later to give out the POAP secret phrase. So, Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you again.
Always good to see you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm glad you could join us today. And, when Caitlin and I were brainstorming on ways, I think, to on sort of like, AI week and what we wanted to accomplish, a couple of things came to mind. And one of them was that AI continues to sort of infiltrate, all aspects of our lives these days, right? I remember I was at a pizza shop like not long ago, family speaking Spanish, and then all of a sudden in the middle, I hear just Chat GPT, right? And it was like an 11-year-old telling his dad what he was doing at school, and it was just amazing all the different places that AI is sort of like now changing or reimagining the way that we work and the way that we think. And I, reached out to a couple of our friends, Heather and Gwan, to sort of help share two different points of view, I think, on the space and what's going on. And of course, I've been developing an AI platform as well, or building as an AI platform. So I hope to be able to chime in here and there as well. But before we jump in, I'd love to give our guests today a chance to sort of like just introduce themselves, maybe describe their journey to AI and sort of what got them, knee deep in all this stuff. So Heather, why don't we start with you?
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and AI is definitely infiltrated everywhere, and it's just really been interesting. My name's Heather Cooper. I'm an AI educator and consultant, and I just really have a passion for generative AI technology. I've been writing online for about 1 year, and I'm a pharmacist, and I still am a practicing pharmacist. I work a 9 to 5, and I transitioned into digital life a little over a year ago, learning how to code, writing online, came over to Twitter, X now, and I also write on Medium and my Substack newsletter. I wasn't always into just AI. I like visual content. I think that I'm a proponent of it because it bypasses a lot of barriers. It opens up a lot of space for people to understand language barriers and things like that. and people understand it better than the written text. So I was already interested in AI art. And when ChatGPT came onto the scene, I jumped onto that, and I'm very interested in that. And I love prompting, prompt crafting, and trying to understand what these models can do. And it's not just prompting, but what can we do? What can they do for us? What can they do? There's a lot of uses. So the more I started talking about that, I teach about those types of things, because a lot of the generative AI technology is based on natural language, which is what ChatGPT and other large language models are. There's a lot that can be done to make a lot of people's lives better, especially for entrepreneurs in digital space. There's just a lot of opportunity there, but understanding it, I try to help people understand how the technology works and how to use it to work for you.
That's awesome. Well, we will definitely dive into a bit more of your experience very soon. Guan, you've been a member of CPG for, I think, as long as I've been here, at least. And so, it's been great to get to know you over the years. I should have worn my X-Copy hoodie, but it was just too hot today.
I know, you're one of the only 64 reporters. So.
But you didn't start with AI, or you had some, kind of underlying pieces, but you were doing something very different. And I remember meeting you at NFT NYC a year ago, and you were heads down working on. Can you explain a little bit about, I guess, your journey and where you are today?
Yeah, no, definitely. So my name's Gwan, and I'm CEO of Core 3D. And Core 3D is a web-based 3D design technology platform. We originally started out, it's actually, our accountant told me this the other day, it's been nearly 5 years now, which is crazy. But we started out working with traditional fashion brands. So the whole kind of concept behind why we built our technology was because the fashion industry was really trying to embrace 3D technology within the design and development process. But the technology was, and still is today, very challenging to use. So we ended up building a web-based solution that was really all around the ideas of speed and accessibility. Fast forward a couple of years, we've worked with some great brands like Theory, Brooks Brothers, Bonobos, Original Penguin. But how I kind of got into the Web3 NFT market was really because, at the time, which seems so long ago now, but 2 years ago, when there were just so much creativity coming out of the space in the form of different IPs, different projects, all of these fantastic ideas that were looking for ways to kind of broaden their creativity through different verticals, and one of them was through clothing. And it just so happened that we had this platform, this software that allowed anybody, any creator, to create beautiful, high quality clothing with no fashion experience needed. And it just kind of became this crazy melting pot. And this is like how Gregarious and I met, and we did a few really great projects with different NFT groups. But as we all know, things have changed over the past year. But one of the things for us that I guess was the biggest takeaway was, for us, we only lived in the digital world when working with traditional brands. But when we started working with NFT projects, and they were designing these incredible kind of items of clothing, they kept on coming to us and they're like, how do we make this a physical thing? And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. We just do the digital thing. But one thing led to another, and we ended up working with a lot of on-demand manufacturers so that we could take designs created on our platform and produced as one-of-ones or in small batch production. And it kind of just ended up creating this dynamic, which was just complete chance, I guess, where we started talking to these on-demand manufacturers. We had the 3D design tool, but one of the questions that I guess I didn't really realize at the time was really important was, we might be able to visualize the design, we might be able to produce the design, but when you're working with an independent brand or a content creator, the first step is, where do you get the artwork? How do you turn an idea into the design to begin with? And that was really kind of the beginnings of how we started to explore how AI could possibly help with that process at the beginning. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but now we're about to launch a new product. We're about to announce it this week. It's called Design Assistant, and it combines generative AI, 3D design, and on-demand manufacturing.
Wow. I mean, so you two have both just described, I think, kind of like where these things are converging to, right? I think like one of the reasons that AI has been so quickly adopted and successful is it brings with it a sense of magic and wow, like by default, right? Like it almost doesn't matter what skill you have, you see it and you're like, that's amazing. I don't know what's going on, right? Like, but it's pretty cool what's happening there. And almost everyone can relate to it in some part of their life, right? Here at CPG, we're, focused on all kinds of entrepreneurship, all kinds of startups. But of course, Chris and Jamie's background is from the CPG world as well. Guan, you're working in that space as well. And I think there's so much happening right now. Heather, I'm wondering if you could, being at the edge, running like a successful newsletter, like a weekly space, by the way, if you don't know, follow Heather. It's a great space and you should definitely attend. Are there any trends that you see sort of with the tooling? And by the way, I know it changes every 5 minutes. But are there any broad strokes that you think, thinking as a consumer really even, and as you start to use your imagination, where do you want it to go, right? Like what are some of the things that are developing out of the ecosystem now? Is it just more efficiency or is it other things that maybe folks aren't expecting?
Well, it's interesting, and it's this weekly space I have is a really unique space because it combines people across all creators across all kinds of different areas. It's not just artists or people interested in Midjourney. It's people who are builders. We have artists, photographers, designers, developers. There's this marketing, different personalities, influencers. And ever since we started having this, we were able to bring people together where we've had collaborations that took place within that space with different people, realizing, hey, I could use your skills and things like that. Right now, it's not any one particular thing that is emerging other than it's kind of a combination where we're finally starting to be able to put all these things together. There's more opportunities to put multiple technologies together and to use this to, as you said, like you don't have to know everything about one particular product or area. You have an idea, there's all kinds of ways to develop it. So right now there's more people are learning more how to use these products in combination with each other, how to create music, how to create along with the voices, how to the background, the product design, for the setting, staging, and those types of things. How do you the 3D movement, 3D development period, and there's the inspiration for art. Where do you find it? How do you get the generative AI? How do you get image generation the way you want it to be? People are using more like consistency. How do we get a consistent look? They want to use more, they're kind of shifting back and forth between Midjourney only to Stable Diffusion and LoRa's and using different types. We're all using language that was totally foreign to us before, but there's just so many different things like that. There's also, say, a lot of things happening with language and translation. So the technologies that can translate into multiple languages, captioning, transcribing your product, Zealous is amazing for being able to, repurpose content. There's just trying to hit as many different platforms as possible and a wider audience and being able to serve their needs using these things in combination, even if it's something as simple as representation where you have characters that look like your audience, those things that are going to make people connect and make you feel more relatable in your product. So it's a lot of different things like that. What I'm excited about is just that there's access, and that we don't have like the gatekeeping is still at bay for the most part, that we all have equal access to these things if we want it. It's not just for the privileged.
Yeah, so a lot of great points in there, and the access thing is actually really one of those powerful things. I don't know who's old enough to remember when you had to like apply to get in like Gmail. Like these things used to be like very, very difficult and gamified all the way. And now it's a lot more egalitarian, I would say, for sure. I really like the point that you touched on about collaboration, though, because you see these like 3 dimensions of collaboration. It's like humans finding new ways to work with humans, humans finding new ways to work with AI, and AIs working with AIs. So, try that on for size. But Guan, Heather really touched on, I think, like sort of like this dynamic process. You come from like a retailing background, fashion background, merchandising is really important. Heather was talking about like, how do you generate things consistently? How do you merchandise in powerful ways? When Core 3D started, I remember you were like, I've been heads down, and I bet there are countless people listening right now who are kind of curious, like, if I'm thinking about trying to bring AI into the fold for my business, like how do I start, or where do I start? And, can you explain a little bit about the journey that you went through, like learning how to adapt and ultimately leverage these tools? And touching on what Heather spoke about, how have you dealt with consistency? Because I think like this is a challenge that a lot of people don't understand is actually going on behind the scenes until you get into the weeds a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I think Heather was making some fantastic points, which I definitely want to kind of like double click on, especially this idea of like, how do we use it in a practical way, right? And I think it's funny because Greg, I think we were actually talking about this back in February or January, and I was telling you, dude, I don't want to touch this AI stuff because I know what I get like. If I start scratching this thing, I'm just gonna just.
I didn't see you for like 6 months after that.
Yeah, I know, dude. I was just like gone for 3 months. But I'm really glad that I did. And I think a big part of it was your encouragement. So thank you. But I think to answer your question, how do you if you're curious about it, where do you start? Start anywhere that's accessible to you with whatever that means. I think for most people, probably today, that still is Midjourney or DALL-E 3 is coming out. I mean, and a lot of what we work in is text to image generation. So I'm not going to speak to any of the other stuff that probably.
Now you built your own though. You didn't go through the public. You're doing like open source kind of path, it seems.
So this is the other thing. So I think I'll try to condense our journey. So Midjourney was my entry point. It was really cool, but I think to Heather's point, it was like, okay, for us, there was a purpose behind, okay, can we create a graphic or a pattern or some sort of artwork that we can put on an item of clothing, right? And when you get into the whole prompting thing, and it's like, oh, this is cool, but I want to change this, or I want to do this, or I see where this could go, but I don't know how to get there today, especially with the tools that we had at the time, which was Midjourney. So I ended up the reason you didn't see me for 3 months is because I just ended up going down this whole Stable Diffusion route, which I don't think is totally necessary for most people, to be totally honest with you, because I think it's like it's very much similar to how I feel about writing code when dealing with Stable Diffusion than say Midjourney. So it's like Midjourney is say like building a website using Squarespace, whereas Stable Diffusion is say like building a website using HTML and CSS. Is kind of how I broadly think about it. But I think what was really good for me was that Stable Diffusion forces you to really have to understand a lot of how things work in order for you to kind of even get from A to B. Whereas with Midjourney, you can kind of get from A to C quite easily, but then from getting from C to D to E in Midjourney is really difficult. Whereas with Stable Diffusion, you can go all the way down to Z, and it's constantly changing. So, I think for us and for me, that kind of 3 month of honestly just a lot of struggling, because nobody, like, there wasn't as much available content as there is today on YouTube, and obviously, CPG, just people who have that experience to like tell you just, that one little thing where you're missing something, which is why for me it reminds me a lot of like trying to learn how to code, because it's like, why didn't anybody tell me that I should have done this and done that? So, but that's all part of the fun, I guess. Of
Is it I'm just curious about how it works though. Is it a very technical thing? Like you have to run your own servers or something, or?
I mean, it can be, yeah. So I think, it depends on how you go there. But honestly, like I don't like. I'll just say that it's a lot easier today than it was 6 months ago, and I'm sure it'll be
than 5 minutes ago.
Easier. Yeah, exactly. I think when I was getting into it, a lot of it required you to actually have the hardware on your computer, whereas now you can run a lot of stuff in the cloud, like through RunPod or through Google Colabs, just things like that. But again, I think that, I'm glad I went through that kind of period, but I think for people looking to understand how you could actually utilize it in their business today, you don't need to do any of that. And I think kind of coming back to Heather's point, it's like, okay, for us right now, and from a lot of the conversations I'm having with other people using it, it's like, okay, AI had the ChatGPT moment that Web3 never had, right? So I think there's like broader understanding of the application of the technology.
Yeah.
But now, especially in the world that we operate in terms of fashion, retail, it's like, okay, how do we actually produce something that somebody would actually want to buy, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the kind of the ways that people are using kind of stable diffusion, text to image within the context of fashion and retail and design is they're literally just like plugging into DALL-E 2, or they're just running a stable diffusion instance, and it's like, show me a cat wearing a hat, and the image comes back and it just looks pretty shit, to be honest with you, right? So, it's like, okay, it's cool, but it's not necessarily something that somebody like a designer or an independent content creator or a brand could actually use in their workflow. So I think a lot of that is going to be down to understanding how to refine the prompts, understanding what models to use, understanding really just like the usability of the front end. So we try to strip away a lot of the complexities that you need when learning Stable Diffusion, so that you give the tools to people in a way that they can actually use it within their existing workflow. So that's a lot of kind of like where we're trying to focus on right now. And again, back to Heather's point, it's like, okay, how do we create an experience that will actually help people use it in a way that's going to improve what they're doing?
Yeah, and I must say, like, if you haven't had a chance, I've had an early look, so I feel humbled to have seen it already. What Core 3D did was, in my opinion, what the brilliant part about leveraging AI was really about removing a significant amount of friction, right, from the process, right? Because and early on, actually, a big core focus of Core 3D was like on collaborative experience and collaborative design, but people always need a little kindling, right? And AI is a tremendous tool for inspiration. And so, I think you should use, if you're looking and considering starting with the sort of like, Squarespace versions is a great way to become inspired and determine, much like Gwan did, I guess, to figure out if you need to go deeper or broader or in a different direction to try to get there. I find the interesting thing with AIs is that for text generation, the more you tell it, the better. And for image generation, not just for good results though, like the less you tell it, the better, right? Like it's more creative, the less you prompt it. But for retail, it starts to look a lot more like text again, right? Like you need to actually be quite specific. And you have to learn how to deal with the compromises because it's not a perfect output per se, right? Like it takes some massaging. Now talking about inspiration, Guan, because I know that was a big part of like what comes out of this new implementation. Heather, you're sort of like building more and more, and I know you engage and talk to lots of startups who are building things. What are the tools you're hoping would be next, right? Like, if you could pull your magic wand out or use your AI chatbot to generate the future, like what would you have, and what do you think founders who maybe are trying to, one of two modalities, right? Like either trying to implement some AI in their product or trying to create their new generation of AI for themselves. Like, where do you think there might be some interesting opportunities?
Well, in the past, it seems like it's been like, years, but in the past several months, things have changed drastically where, as you say, like for Midjourney and just things like you really don't need to do much to get something beautiful. And since Stable Diffusion answered that with Stable Diffusion XL, it's getting easier, but you do have to work a little bit harder. What I see happening though is that there are a lot of things where they're making the access, they're trying to take it's making it a little bit easier for people to access Stable Diffusion through different, like not just the collab, but Run Diffusion, Civitai. They have LoRa's, and there's so much explosive growth with open source. People are creating so much stuff that is helping, like you can use this, plug this in, try to use that. And I think that what seems like it's happening is that the prompting is not as important as it was, where you can get a lot more. And it seems even with each update in the GPT-4, it's getting easier to come up with different prompts, and you don't have to be as specific frameworks, as, if you will. I recently I got access to DALL-E 3 within Chat GPT. And what I noticed is I've been using DALL-E 3 on Bing. And it's amazing because it's really good. It's really right there with Midjourney. But what I've been finding when I'm using it within Chat GPT is, like you said, instead of telling it what to prompt, I ask it, hey, can you make me something? I have a toolkit. Can you make me a mock-up for that source that I can use that for my promotion, my lead generation? And this is what it's about. This is what's in it. And I let it make up. It gave me opportunity. It seems like it likes that, and it kind of just gives you different options. And then it gives you prompts that are with it, with the images it generates, but it also gives you descriptions of those prompts and what the reason, what the purpose of what each image is supposed to be showing. I've been taking those prompts and the descriptions and dropping them into Midjourney, and that creates some amazing stuff. So now it's kind of like, why are we feeding prompts into DALL-E 3? Let it use Chat GPT to come up with, how about make me generate images that show this or that, or if I have a product that I want to show, let it see what it comes up with. And you can be, and it'll say, is there anything else that I can do for you, whatever. But it's kind of like, it's sort of in going back and forth with it and learning how to use it in that way. And as we're doing that, then it helps a lot, not necessarily to get consistency, but it gives you inspiration. It's more ideas. And then you can kind of go further, since you're already within ChatGPT, or drop it into Claude or Bard or Bing, Chat, whatever, Perplexity. I use that all the time, and ask for more information about that. So now if you're sitting there and you're creating something, if you don't know what something means, what does this part of the prompt mean? If I put this in, how could I get this effect? What does it explain the background for that for me? I was doing something with chemistry compounds, and I wanted to get a little bit more information about that. You can find all that information out and then say, how can I show that? How can I, create an image that way? But also, how can I explain that? What good is it if I just put these images out there without explaining to my audience what it is? And it helps you explain it in a way that they can understand it. What I do want to mention, when I was listening to you, Gwan, talking about the different things processes that you were using, and what I wanted to mention is, I think for a lot of startups, what I would recommend is, there's a lot of tools out there like Guide. It seems like there's so much, we all have to kind of catch up. There's not much time to learn how to do certain. Once you figure out, okay, this is how I got this to work, it'd be great to use a screen recording. There's these tools, Guide, Scribe. It documents while you're, it just kind of records the screen while you're going through something step by step, and it creates a walkthrough video but it's not even just a video. It's a step-by-step process tool where you can record that and then share it to users. You can share it with your team, so you don't have to keep saying, okay, go click this, then do that, then you're going to open up this window. And that, I think the issue with a lot of startups or a lot of products is it takes too long to learn how to use, even how to get started. I have people DMing me all the time about trying their tool, but I don't have time. I work full time. If I have to sit and figure out, okay, what do I got to do? I got to log in. I got to create an account. What exactly? How do you do this? Make it easy as possible. Loom, Scribe, Guide, whatever. Screen recordings are so helpful. Screenshots, but these things combine all those things together, and it keeps track of where you click, so you don't have to go back and do it. You might have forgotten yourself. Like, wait, how did I get to that point? So using those things to help onboard people and just to kind of collaborate with your team or users. I think it use as many tools as possible, even if it goes into different languages.
Yeah. Time to value. Every founder should tattoo that on their arm, because the secret to winning is to minimize the time to value in whatever you've created. Just a programming note. If you have a question, feel free to drop it into the comments or into Telegram. We're happy to take them. Barring any questions, I will continue to ask some that I have. So look forward to seeing your questions. And Heather, you touched on a couple of really interesting points in there. There's almost like a circular economy to AI, right? Like everything that is the output of something is the input to another thing. And I think that you're really highlighting a powerful part of this process, much like I was mentioning with Guan, like the workflow idea, right? It's really like these workflows that are really emerging, right, as the new ways or ideal ways or optimized ways to do things. And again, touching on that multimodality, right, about like not just working in one medium, but it's sort of like being able to fluidly go between text and video and audio, diagrams and math and code, et cetera. This is just a skill set that most people have not like really mastered yet, right? Like folks are not accustomed to doing this. But Guan, that leads me to sort of asking you about like, how do you plan your next steps around AI, right? Like, I think you bit off a very large but important part, kind of the top of the funnel of ideas. And, looking back probably seems like obvious, duh, like we should have done that, right? But where else do you apply AI, I guess, like to the internals, and how do you validate, that a direction is a good place to go, or like what your next steps should be, now that you're, an AI entrepreneur as well. I remember you made a comment to me that I always remembered, that you're like, I could probably put an AI on anything, right? Like, but I'm avoiding doing that as much as possible. So I'd love for you to double click on that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely still in that camp, if not even more. I think, I guess kind of where we are today compared to where we first started. We've kind of gone through that journey, right, of like, that pure kind of like magic feeling of like, wow, this is insane. Where can I throw this? I'm just throwing this against the wall and just seeing what can stick, and it's really tempting to just keep on doing that because it feels cool and it looks cool. But I think for us over the past month especially, we've really had to kind of dial back and go, okay, even though we can, does that mean we should, right? And I'll give you an example of that. When we first released our kind of beta of our tool called Design Assistant, which actually I think Greg, you're one of our early users. The kind of the workflow is
I'm pretty sure you said in reaction to me suggesting more AIs.
Yeah, I know that. So on our design tool, you have the ability to generate a graphic for like a t-shirt or an item or an all over print or pattern. And, when we first released it, we had, 20, 30, 40 different styles that you can choose from. We kind of went into like Stable Diffusion 1.5 and tried to like pick out some of the artists that it was trained on to try to kind of give like abstract this and 19th century art that, and they'd be like, look at all the stuff you could make. And people were playing with it, and they're like, okay, this is cool, but then you try and put it on a t-shirt or you put it onto like a hoodie, it's like, who the hell is like, nobody's gonna buy that, right? Like that's not what people are looking to create. So I think for us, it's really all we're really trying to focus on that right now is just kind of like trying to find that beachhead of like, okay, these are the types of styles, these are the types of designs that people want to create and can create at a level in which they feel comfortable about putting that out to their community and potentially, and selling those IRL, And I think kind of just trying to establish that and build upon that is really kind of all we're trying to focus on right now. Because we know that if we can establish that foundation, there's just so many different ways that we can kind of go from there, but without really trying to, like Greg, you always tell me this, it's just like, what's the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And it's like, if as long as we can demonstrate that, that's all we care about, and then we'll figure out where we go from there.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? Because I think going back to this concept of like time to value, prompt paralysis or paralysis by choice is an equally bad problem to hoist onto your user, right? And, you get in there and you're like, oh crap, there's like 10,000 things to choose from. I can't choose now, right? Or, and all these things, trying to discern and separate, et cetera, causes a lot of mental friction for people. And I think that friction is ideally working against your cause, right? So I really love that word of caution that don't do the gimmicky things, do the things that are improving the quality of life of your customer, right? Or that are inherently producing better quality content, right? Or product for your customer. Like you said, like you're designing things for people to wear. If it looks like garbage, like is anyone ever going to order again, right? Is anyone going to want to recommend it, right? Like, et cetera, if they feel like they got steered in the wrong direction. We did get a question from Eli for both of you, and we'll start with Heather. But is there a use case for AI that you've seen recently that really impressed you?
What I've seen recently, I would say the lip syncing with the translation, language translation. I don't know if you've seen the Hey Gen, translate. And when I first saw that, I was just
super
like,
creepy.
that it's creepy. But then again, it's like there's a couple different apps that do this, and it's kind of like it's mind-boggling that it's able to match the emotion and the tone. And even if it's
Heather, just
like
for context, for folks who haven't seen it, HeyGen has a dubbing feature, and it will do another language, but also change your mouth so that it looks like you're saying the words, that are coming out of your mouth. Right?
And it's very natural. It's very natural. It doesn't look crazy, and it's not as scary to me as just like deep fake. It's cool. It's sort of like I did it with another app called Dubbing by Wondercraft, and I had it translate to Italian, and it's accurate too. People were, saying, "No, I speak Italian. That's accurate." Like, how do you judge? But I think because it helps to kind of connect with people if you use it in that way. Now, I know people are going to do whatever they want with it, but to me, that is crazy because that's the most impressive thing because it's taking it's taking the language, it's transcribing it, it's putting it back out there, and even the tone, the emotion, it sounds natural. And it's a lot of different things happening there, but I think that it touches a lot of people, makes people feel something, and oftentimes I think that they appreciate you try, even if you answer. If I type something back in the person's language, if I have it translated, I like to do that sometimes. It gives you a little bit of a bond, and they understand that you feel a little bit more. You took the time to do that, just to address in the style that they speak. So I think it is, I'm kind of excited about that for all types of different reasons, but I think for communication and just connecting with people, that's really amazing.
Guan, what about you? Besides your assistant, obviously.
Honestly, like Heather was mentioning, that the translating thing, I was actually just with my family, and we would like sending videos to each other in different languages. It was so much fun crazy slash a little creepy, but just amazing. But honestly, the thing that really jumps to my mind in terms of like the most impressive use that I've seen recently is one of my really good friends in New York is an art director for a gaming studio in New York. And like every time he shows me what he's been working on using Midjourney as a substitute for concept artists that he would have to hire from overseas to basically put together these different kind of ideas that kind of really help him develop these different visions that he has for video games. I'm just like I feel like I spent a lot of time in AI, but when he shows me this stuff, I'm like, wait, how did you do this? Or what do you like? I'm just blown away. And I think it kind of comes back to the point that we've all been making, which is, like AI isn't like this silver bullet that's going to magically do everything for you, right? It's like, how you decide to pick and choose these tools to layer over or integrate into what you're trying to do, what you understand, is always going to produce the best results, So yeah, I think kind of to me that I'm still amazed every time he shows me stuff where I'm like, how the hell did you do that?
There are mind-blowing things, and despite the spamminess of those threads on Twitter, they usually do have really cool things in them when they're like, here's 10 things you can do from the last 12 hours that this tool has been live or whatever it may be. We're getting close to time, and I wanted to sort of end with a bit of a reflection and hear your thoughts on this. I was talking to a founder last week, and, one of my big takeaways, I think, in building Zealous was ultimately that the killer feature for AI is trust. And you've both kind of touched on this, because it takes a tremendous amount of trust for a customer to sort of get to the point that they trust what you're sort of giving them, right? And like the gimmick and the fun part is great, right? Like I'm going to use it and it's cool to generate something, but when would I use it in a way that matters, right? Like when will I use it for my business, or when will I use it to communicate with my family, or when will I use it to do something truly important, right? And I think that trust is this feature, this hidden feature that most people don't think about. And it's actually, I think, an instructional sort of feature for you to design around, right? Which is that, how do you establish trust over time? We have some more questions coming actually. But if you want to each maybe just like quick 1 minute, how have you found trust, or tools maybe that have engendered trust to get you to, believe in them and ultimately leverage them and rely on them more and more?
I think that, like, as far as like security and safety, online, safety, that type of thing, knowing that something's gonna, when it states it's gonna delete it after an hour, this is only gonna be good for this long. Understanding that, okay, you're taking a risk, putting your information out there, and is how long is it going to stay there, and what are they going to do with it afterward? That makes me feel comfortable, a little bit more comfortable, a lot more comfortable using certain tools that I might not want to use otherwise. And I hope that that's true, that they really are deleting it, but that just them saying that and making a point of addressing that helps. Also, if there's a chat bot and there's customer service, they're popping up, do you need you have a question? To know that if you ask a question, they don't say, okay, we'll get back to you, during working hours or something like that. Like, if you're going to have it up there, have somebody monitor it so that they can get the question answered, because I'm going to move on and go to something else. And I don't believe that you're serious if you say you're going to get back to me, next week or in a few days, whatever. Or do you have an answer now? Or what can I do to go forward? How do I get past this problem or this whatever issue barrier that's keeping me from, purchasing or finding out more about this, company? Being transparent also.
Yeah,
Where's
great.
pricing? Where's the pricing? If I have to hunt for it, do you have it on the menu? Can I just do it on the hamburger menu real fast?
Mm-hmm.
Because I often look at apps and see, or any type of product, what's the price? is it even worth me going further? If it's $50 a month, I'm not interested, and I wouldn't write about it. So just being transparent, open, and available.
Yeah. Well, and Guan, I know I would love to hear your thoughts on this. However, we do have two questions that kind of fit for you. But I will say that for anyone who wants to explore those topics about trust and how to build and design products, join us on Thursday for the workshop, because we will be able to do that one-on-one and chat with each other. But Guan, I wanted to give you a chance to also answer the question that came up for Core 3D. Oh, still on mute.
So yeah, the question was, Core 3D is a tool for fashion brands to integrate into existing workflow, the creators and their experience. There are challenges in meeting these two different user archetypes, for example, hesitant in creating original artwork using AI prompts. Yeah, this is actually a question / experience we get a lot. And I think it kind of taps into this wider kind of feeling that we're seeing a lot more from a creative standpoint, where I don't want to say there's like a resistance or hesitance to use AI within the design process. I mean, there definitely is to some degrees. But I guess it kind of comes back to our point of like, this isn't a silver bullet, right? So the other question that we got asked was, how can AI be used for building a successful streetwear fashion brand? So I was actually at this AI conference a couple of weeks ago in New York, and I met the founder of this company called Business of Fashion, which is this pretty large media company that focuses in on the fashion industry, but like, you know, the high-end fashion industry. And we were talking about, you know, how it's going to be different this time when it comes to fashion and technology kind of coexisting or integrating, because fashion has this horrible tendency of being very resistant to change, especially when it comes to technology. And he was saying that he feels that this is going to be very different this time, because he's seeing the best designers at the top brands using AI not to essentially create an entire collection from scratch, but using it in their inspiration process, using it in their kind of their design process, just as another tool in their toolkit. But obviously with what AI can provide in terms of trend data, in terms of responsiveness, in terms of being able to kind of answer all those millions of questions that you probably just don't really pay any attention to because you just don't have the time to do so. But now you can do them in your studio and really respond to how the market reacts, how people kind of give you feedback on those initial designs. So, you know, from our conversation or my conversation with the founder of Business of Fashion, I really think that, you know, it's going to be different this time from the fashion perspective of how they start to incorporate AI in their design process, in their inspiration process. And yeah, not in the sense of the silver bullet of, you know, build me a streetwear brand or build me a new collection. So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting counter or component to that though, not just inspiration, but also distillation, right? You know, like understanding culture and memes and things like that. You can ask AI to analyze things for you, right? Like to tell you maybe the things that you can't see in commonality, or to provide that context, right, around things. And so, you know, I think like while, you know, what's made streetwear often, there's a lot of tastemakers in streetwear, right? Like there's just folks that sort of kind of make a thing, right? And a lot of times that's true in fashion. But some of it is also sensing and picking up on sort of like other cultural things that are happening, and then sort of having something that services it, right, or addresses it in a certain way. So I think there's some interesting I think that distillation of like, I do it all the time now. Just like, hey, can you tell me like what these 10 tweets have in common, right? Like if I'm trying to figure out how to write like a better tweet, or you know, where I see examples of things doing the things that I think are good, but I'm not quite sure how to put my finger on what's going on in that thing, right? So, you know, another powerful hack for that process. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I know Chad had a little bit of housekeeping to do, but before we go, I just want to say thank you very much to Guan, to Heather for joining us today, sharing your insights. I know like this topic is so wide and we could barely scratch the surface of all the things that are really going on inside of it. But I hope having a couple of or a few different points of view on sort of like how all these pieces are playing together is going to give you a little bit of a head start as you make your way forward. As I mentioned, though, don't forget Thursday, I'll be back with some folks from CPG, and we're trying to like workshop some of these things for you if you want to come and ask questions in a more one-on-one environment.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone. Thanks, Greg, for hosting. Heather, Guan, just fantastic insights from you both here. I know folks clearly from the questions, are engaged. Really appreciate what you had to say. I did want to just jump back in to drop the POAP secret phrase. It is chat CPG with CPG in caps. So go and get your POAP, redeem it. You'll have 72 hours to get that done. So even until you can do it while during the session on Thursday when you come back, but make sure to do that to connect it to your CPG rewards account. And then also it will help you to continue to stay eligible for the CPG certified at the end of the process. So make sure to go and grab that chat CPG, again, capital CPG, just to make sure that everyone saw that. But yeah, if anyone has, if there's any more questions, where we got like 2-3 more minutes here, if anyone has from the audience, if not, maybe turn it over to, maybe the question that I've been asking folks, and Gwan and Heather would maybe love to get your kind of 1-minute take on this, is what's the best advice that you've received early on that you want to pass along to the folks in the accelerator?
I would say don't be afraid don't wait until you know everything. Just there's so much out there. It's really up to you what your interests are. There's no limits, and it sounds cliche, but it's the truth. Whatever, just start asking, have a conversation with whatever LLM, just start asking questions and see what the results are and go from there. Whatever, if you're interested in something and you don't know how to do it, just find out. Don't let things hold you back. And this is moving fast, and I don't think, we're all going to have access to everything forever. I'm a Gen X, and, I'm always worried about, what's going to happen next, but take advantage of it while we have it now. And you have all the stuff available to you. Don't let it sit there when you have an opportunity to remake your life, your career, whatever, or just learn something, enrich yourself.
Excellent. Thanks. And Guan?
Yeah, I completely agree with Heather. I think when it comes to learning anything new, especially from a technology perspective, it helps to kind of have some sort of goal in mind, right? It's like, I want to learn this so I can do that. But at the same time, just have fun with it. Like I was trying to do one very specific thing, and I just ended up like all the way over here because I was like, oh, maybe I should do this. But I think kind of like Heather was saying, like now is the time just to like have fun, play around with it, let yourself get lost in it. But then also, again, like you keep on saying, it's not a silver bullet. You do have to come back to what problem are you trying to solve? What's your core competency? How can you combine this with what you're already good at? But for right now, just play, just have fun.
Excellent. I appreciate that from you both. All right. No more questions coming in. With that,
I have a question, Chad. What's on your shirt?
What's on my shirt? Oh, so I've been every session I've been wearing a different Hawaiian shirt to see if I can get through the whole season with different shirts. This is my Pirates of the Caribbean, my Disney World attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean.
I was just on that ride. That's awesome. Guan, can we get one of those in Core 3D?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, Chad, here you go. Here we go.
You're like, we'd love to work with Disney. Yes, absolutely. Well, awesome. Again, thank you both. Gregarious, thanks always for stepping in and hosting and driving this conversation. And hopefully we'll see a bunch of you over in the workshop on Thursday evening. With that, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.